Okay, we're reaching part 2 of the series here. If you haven't seen part 1, go to the very end of this one and it'll show up in your top left hand corner. That'll be part 1. You can watch part 1 before you watch part 2. Here we are at the part where Inanna, Ishtar, has just issued a curse to Gilgamesh and has scorned him for killing the bull of heaven. But we've really passed a little bit of the story here too, but I'll try to get back to it. But in this interpretation here, it tells you that Enkidu tears the leg off and he throws it out here. And you try to make a connection to what that has to do with. Well, again, the story and its new interpretation rings true. Thus, we find that the Egyptian zodiac, and a lot of zodiacs, had a bull's thigh depicted in what we would now call the constellation of Lynx. On the same planisphere, it would appear that Ursa Major, a great bear, is depicted by a great hippopotamus instead of the great bear. But since the northern tribes of Europe had never seen a hippopotamus, this change in species is quite understandable. Well, yeah, it's where you have stuff is where you have stuff. But then there has to be the explanation of Leo, and well, there was old lions there in old elder times. Yeah, and all these other little animals that go along with it and stuff. But a great bear makes much more sense for people that were dealing with giant cave bears a lot in their ancient mythology that come on through, doesn't it? So here we see the depiction of it, and right here in the center, spinning around and around, instead of the great bear, it ends up being the hippopotamus. Now, the great bear is also that cart that is used in some of the instances to get from place to place, but that also makes up sign of the swastika, where it goes around and around and around. It's like, well, you can see the solid dashes on the side here. If I was to take from this line and go all the way across to this line, well, actually this line, sorry, then I would have a Z. And if I was to take and go from this line all the way down to that one that was there and put a Z across it too, now we would have that effect. And this wheel is spinning this way, so that would look like it's spinning this way, and that's the way that works. Yeah, it's one of the esoteric things that goes along with it. People have said, well, this only comes from the later times, and Greeks and Romans and stuff, and Ptolemaic era and everything. Well, yeah, but it looks like somebody went through the trouble of saying that whenever they show the water god and over here and the thing that goes along with the floods and how it hooks up with the way the zodiac is lined up on this thing, that he's a little early. So it must have gone back at least a thousand and a half years before that. Or other people say, well, that's just his procession. Look, they got people crammed in that whole side of it. Right. There's also things like Sagittarius here, where it's actually a horseman, like a centaur. And they didn't have horses till at least the Hyksos showed up there. So that'd have to come from at least that point. Well, this could be an adoptive point too. Yeah, a lot of the Greco-Roman stuff, whenever it gets Egyptianized, looks exactly like this, and exactly like it had from before, of course. They had the same iconography of red ochre women and pale females, and red ochre males and pale females, just like the Minoans and all these other people did all across the Mediterranean during that time. It's a symbology we can get into some other time, but regardless, they had that same thing going on, and then here's a connective of it. So it shows you Sagittarius and Scorpio, which also there used to be a crab that isn't there anymore with Cancer, and Libra, Virgo, and then, yeah, here we go with Cancer, and here at the bottom, Gemini, Taurus, Aries, Pisces, and the bull's eye is shown in the middle. Yeah, I thought that was weird because I was like, it should be down around here, and well, they got that thing, it must have been the thing that was blacked out. Oh, okay, it's blacked out. I didn't think it was blacked out. And the pic also, that almost looks like a guitar aiming that way. And it's really supposed to be a leg that comes down and goes chink, chink, chink when it has a hoof down here. So, yeah, whatever. Okay, anyhow. So, yeah, great bear was once a great hippopotamus. And of course, so now we can maybe make some understanding why the hippo is so key in the Book of Life and the Book of Coming Forth by Day, or the Book of the Dead, and the way that all works out whenever you get the symbology of what part that plays in the symbology. It has been claimed that the zodiac of Dendera, being Ptolemaic, is based on Greek rather than earlier Egyptian concepts. Yet here's the evidence that the pictograms within the Dendera zodiac were known in ancient Sumer. It's quite possible that the modern zodiac does indeed have the ancient Near Middle Eastern roots, just as many have suspected. I'm just going to hit a bell again. In Egypt, it is like that it was the pharaoh Shishi Mambira of the 14th dynasty who ushered in the new era of Aries, the first of the Hyksos shepherd pharaohs. However, in Sumer it was King Lugalbanda, with the assistance from the god Gilgamesh, or Orion, who fought off the Sumerian theological battle between the followers of Taurus and Aries, and became the first Sumerian shepherd king. This before is the most probably why the Epic of Gilgamesh was written. It was not an epic tale of great king as such, but an ancient bimillennial celebration of the movement of the stars. Now again, this is done by Ralph Ellis here, a couple years back, and now he's got this book out, Jesus of the Last Pharaohs. You gotta check that one out. And the other one that I saw that was very interesting, just even in the concept of it and what it was said. But so it's quite possible that the modern zodiac does indeed have ancient Near or Middle Eastern roots, just as many have suspected. Well, you know, the Sumerians are known for their astrology, and the ancient Chaldeans and people that were up through this area here. And in doing so, yeah, I mean, they named a lot of the stars and so on, but a lot of them actually got named later, the names we use for them now. Here's a weird thought, though. Let's go back up here into something, because I didn't want to ruin where we were at and keep a continuity. But so, keep in mind, in Egypt, they found an ancient asteroid that was made of iron, and they said their gods' bones were made of iron. Even before they had iron, or we give credit for them even knowing what the hell it was, they were really in a copper age, not even into a good bronze age. They said their gods had bones of steel or iron. Now, King Tut had that dagger, and they say, well, that's meteor iron and everything off of it, but it doesn't go with any of the meteors they found. But that's a huge chunk, and I've shown a few videos of giant meteors and the way this works. Now, Enkidu is supposed to have played the part of a meteor in somehow, but then that makes no sense how that would become his friend anyway, and how that would all work out. So a lot of people have said that somebody who they thought that was barbaric, they used along with themselves a long time ago, in a time of Leo coming into Taurus, and kicked the ass of some people that lived up there in the north. And just like the mythology later written in the Greeks, which is all twisted up and funny, and very much like the mythology of the elves and the pixies and fairies and stuff is twisted in as kind of a mythology back on yourselves, and oh yeah, together we whip their ass, and the way that goes down. But Enkidu is also seen as a meteor, and they call it out as so. And that tells me that, well, man, it could go back much further than that. That they originally had this story. There was this great guy that helped him to get through it. And they had that story all the way until something else big happened. And then they had that story kind of a mixture until the flood happened. And then that got turned into a different story. Not the original flood, the one that happened in Sumer locally, and got changed again. And then we start seeing everything is Akkadian based and bound. Or some of these names are. For Shamash is Utu, Utu, Utu. So it changes. But it changes, and at this point where they start calling these people not godly names or anything that's even a demigod, but turn around and they are just big guys. Lugal, big guy. And a lot of people have turned their head around and said, that's got to be the Cro-Magnon type people that are over 6 foot tall taking over the locals, who are not the same, and they're 5.5 foot at best. But we've made links here with the Shepherd Kings and Taurus and everything, but oh yeah, God, I didn't do it. But you see that form there, and I talked about it could be somebody holding a bow, of course. Let's grab the little stick again. So this could be a bow bent down like this, and that arm, instead of even utilizing this, could be bent around. And then here we go, and the guy's pulling it, and you can see the little cluster I said that was making a head, right? But hold on a minute. Also, this little cluster right here doesn't necessarily have to mean anything. And look how it looks like even under the fabric, his arm just bends down to here, and there's stars, which is actually supposed to be the tail hanging off the end of the aegis. But if you looked at Egypt's iconography, that's the pose that the pharaoh's always in. We call it a smiting pose. But there he is again, Orion the hunter, carrying it through. Now the belt of Orion here is the 3 pyramids. So how does this go back? How old are those pyramids? Well, they put shell casings on them supposedly. Yeah, does the heart of them go back a bunch more? I mean, if they've only been uncovered for a certain amount of time, therefore the inside ones we're looking at mainly should be not really as weathered as what the hell we're seeing. Unless something's off there. There's just that simple observation. You go over here and you go to this temple, they go, oh, we know it's built like this. They go, look how much more weathering there are on these rocks up here. Shh, move along. But there's that Orion pose, that smiting, which is done pretty much with a mace, especially in a lot of the photographs it's done. And so there we have it again. And in this version, he's not really killing the bull. He's in a way, but there's the Apis bull that's kind of different. But a key factor in these, and something that goes along with Halloween, that's when this is recorded regardless of when you're seeing it, is that right now there's a torrid meteor shower coming out of here. So in other words, the death blow has already been given, and now we come into fall through the death of winter. Yeah, and whenever that happens, the sun goes down 1 degree per day, like the Sumerians had all figured out. It's the reason we got a 360-degree ball. And it slows down and it stops right at one certain place at December 21st. And then due to the wobble of the earth, it looks like it doesn't really go anywhere for 3 days. And then it starts rising again on December 25th to come back around into spring. Got videos on that too, though. Anyhow, hopefully this made some connections for you. Some astral, theological connections for you. Got a video coming up on connections having to do with Aldebaran and the bullseye itself and its connections. But here we can see even unicorns, Orion, but perhaps where'd he get the golden fleece from? Well, Leah's over there. Well, he's got to kill something before he gets to then he has to fight off the bull of heaven. What is this? It's going around the zodiac, and it's actually the same thing that you are well know of as the trials that Hercules goes through for Samson. They're quite connected. Oh, one other thing about this, you see they've got the stars coming straight down here, But in this, they don't show the sword coming straight down. They show it going, wah. Well, if they do it show it going, wah, they should be using this one as the hilt, and then it would run through that. But now there's a little cluster of 3 right there that's below that 3, and people have always run it straight down. Just like his leg doesn't have to come out and be bent out here, because there's not a great one for the knee. Let's use this for part of the leg. The leg could be coming out this way and down and so on. Yeah, I remember being a kid and seeing this idea and then going out and looking at it and trying to get in the dark, figuring out you turn off the porch lights, you can see them a whole lot better, and let your eyes adjust totally, and then you can see. And I told my mom, I go, well, they're all over the place. I can see some of the bright ones. She goes, well, it's only really the bright ones and the way they connect up, just like when you do the dot to dot thing. And I go, okay, so I got it. But then I started saying, this looks like that looks like that. After a few of those, I'm sure she was like, Mama's got to go now. Keep looking and come in a minute. So, anyhow, I remember getting a star chart. And then we got a real good one with our telescope. I was surprised at the decent one that came with a telescope that went with it. But anyhow, like, share, and subscribe, and enjoy, and we'll get on to it here further. But here's some connections from elder times and hooking up together and where that goes. And like I've told you, you can write most of the biblical stories and a lot of the stories of ancient people. For they told you in old times, yeah, it's written in the stars, and you're like, what? Oh, it's written in the stars. And you go, that dude's Coco for Cuckoo Puffs, or the other way around. See, there's a bull's horn, there's Leo. So what are we now? Well, the Aries. Well, yeah, that works out. Yeah, okay. So these ancient astrologers, boy, they're thick with knowledge. It's not just regular old farming and everything either, but they got all this to go along with it, and they know the time when the seasons flood and work things all around it and everything. Yeah, the sad thing is they had it all figured out, but some people north of there all had it figured out too, and they all had sluices. And whenever they all started to overrun during one year, and apparently it run out of drought going right into it, and there was a problem, where they tell you in the stories, then all of a sudden it started to overrun their sluices, and the people way the hell up there let loose a couple. Well, guess what? That made the people just below that come up and fill an overflow, and then they busted loose, and then it went downstream, and then by the time it all added up and it all let loose, the bottom part of the entire Tigris-Euphrates flooded in, became actually synonymous with each other somewhat for a while, and got 15 cubits deep. It basically killed off a large amount of livestock, and this was the heartland for a large part of the growth and the part of civilization. So it's something that we still lament today. It's hidden, though, somewhat in the Bible, isn't it? That's too bad. Peace.